thing tonight to start on our exploration of the middle school. And thank you so much for being here tonight. I was afraid that with coming back from vacation, this meeting would kind of get lost and people would forget that we were doing this. So I'm delighted to see so many people here. And in the interest of moving into the agenda as quickly as possible, I'd like to ask Terry Holmes to perhaps say some introductory remarks, and then we're here to hear from you.
Good evening, and thank you for coming out tonight. I think this is the real fun of what we do. The fun to really talk about what I call real educational issues, what we want kids to know and be able to do. So much of what we do centers around budgets, personnel decisions, but to really talk about education issues, I find intriguing. Some of you may not know, but the formation of the New England League of Middle Schools way back in the early 70s, I participated in some of that activity, and certainly was a principal of a middle school in 1973, if you can imagine that, probably before some of these people were even born. And at that time, we were dealing with just a fascinating guy from Brandeis University by the name of Howard Epstein. And Howard Epstein was a researcher, a brain researcher, who really described to us what this adolescent was, this child who is between grade 5 and grade 8. And what happens to their brains as they socially, sexually, and otherwise mature. Their brains freeze up. And all of you that have had a 7th grader know exactly what I'm talking about. It is a time where all the energy in the body is really being used to do other developmental functions. And so there is a research-based lack of brain development and brain activity. Not that it totally freezes up in the sense that I try to make a joke of it, but the research clearly will show that it is not a time for abstraction. It's a time to introduce and explore, to do a lot of hands-on kinds of things. But it is a time when kids are going through a very interesting phase in their life. And I found it to be an extremely challenging time, but probably the most interesting time in my life education. You really still felt like you really had impact on these young people. And seeing so many of the staff members here tonight, I know you know what I'm talking about. What's been happening in the school in the last several years is to explore those issues as we've tried to move from what was a junior high concept into a middle school concept. And a lot of work has been done, and you're going to see the result of some of that tonight as we turn the microphones over to staff members who have formed a mission committee and have done a lot of the groundwork. We hope certainly that what they will do to us is introduce the conversation that we all need to have. And that after they produce some of the things that we should talk about, that we will go to some breakout sessions. And my thought is that we would break out perhaps around each of the 4 school committee members, and we'll count off in 4s, and we'll go off to someone's room in the school and spend 45 minutes really talking about some of these issues and then come back. Because it's going to be very hard to do that in this larger group. So, to get everyone actively involved in the conversation. The conversation certainly of what are we about? What do we want kids to know and be able to do? As with the elementary schools, I have drafted, and with a lot of help from Paula, by the way, some ideas about the survey we will do concurrently with this activity. And Paula and I have put together some of these thoughts. And hopefully after tonight we may wish to add a few additional areas. Can you see that all right? It's much like the elementary survey, but obviously we've used some nomenclature and terminology that would be more appropriate for middle-level education. For example, what are the great issues that I'm sure this staff will struggle with and this community will struggle with? Is the whole issue of whether we will have heterogeneous grouping or homogeneous grouping in the school. Now, pure middle schools typically move toward heterogeneous grouping, but it is a very difficult concept for communities to deal with. But you could have 7 hours of discussion tonight just on those 2 issues. And probably at the end of it, we'd be 50 for and 50 against. Other issues around how much we will do with exploration. I used that word earlier. How much activity-centered kinds of curriculum do we propose so that kids are more hands-on? In other words, middle schools typically are a time for exploration. So I've tried, with Paula's help, to reframe the elementary survey and make it a middle school survey. And I would hope to color code this and get the kids to complete it in the middle school. Certainly to send it home and get parents to do it, make it available for the general community, and certainly color code it so that we can find out what the staff thinks, as a whole staff. And then use this as, one of the most important words we want to put into this final draft that I think probably you already have done some of this work in your committee. So a lot of this is not new. Maybe a few of the words are new. But to get input from the community at large. In the elementary, we got, I think, 250 of these surveys back. So it represented a fairly large block of the community. So what we're about tonight is to have a conversation about middle schools and to start to deal with the issues of what is most important. What are we about as a school? And a lot of times schools are about a lot of things, but we very often then have to bring all that together and point toward a direction of what do we want this school to be about. And then, very proudly, put that over the door for everyone who comes in the front entrance to know what we're about here as a school. To be proud of our mission, and then you carry it on. So with that, I would thank you again for coming and introduce Dave Mayo, who will start giving us an additional basis for the conversation, and then we'll move into some of the action groups. You didn't need this.
No, I can move that along. Do you mind if I bring that? Yeah.
Not at all. Would it be easier if we just sat out there and you did right here?
Whatever you prefer.
I just soon sit out there, would you not?
Move number 21.
Look at it up there.
Yeah, because you don't want to sit.
Mary, there are microphones up there.
No idea.
Can you get that on the camera?
All right. I'm going to first of all introduce the members of the subcommittee. I might say that it's been interesting and fun working with the committee. People have had a lot of different ideas, and I think we came up with kind of an interesting format. It was rather enjoyable. Mrs. Bridges came to one of the meetings to kind of help us out. I'd like to say special thanks to Frank Smith, right over here, who made out a little booklet for us about what a mission statement is and how to write one. And we were all kind of befuddled in the very beginning. It was kind of difficult trying to get a focus. But this really helped us to bring us together. So if the members of the committee, starting with Frank, would just go around and introduce themselves.
I'm Frank Smith, parent of a son that's in the middle school and a daughter that's already been through it, and I also work at the Hewlett Packard Corporation, and I do a lot of work with teams with missions and visions and all that sort of thing. So glad to be here.
I'm Bill Chetland, and I'm not going to give a long speech like that, but I'm the community representative on the school council.
Diane Regan, I teach 8th grade English.
Jen Norman, I teach 6th grade science. Lisa Reeves, I teach 6th grade.
Marie Schindler, I'm a parent.
Donna Rose, parent. Martha Philbrick, I teach 5th grade.
Harry Marshall, 6th grade.
The format that we're going to go through, we decided that pretty much what Mr. Holmes was saying, we wanted to get input from a lot of different people just to give you a flavor few minutes at the beginning of homeroom period before the holiday, and we asked the kids to give their ideas of what a good middle school would be like. And we have 4 teachers that are going to report on their findings there. We also asked the parents through the Galvin Gazette to give their responses. Mrs. Lowe's was working under the constraints of the holiday, so we didn't get as many responses as we might have liked to, but we have a representative sampling anyway. And then yesterday, during the monthly faculty meeting, we had the faculty break into groups, and they came up with this information up here about what they felt a good middle school is about. So I think that's a dialogue that we were really trying to begin. Dr. Mullen did give me a statement that she would like me to read. That. Reading thing, but I'll try to do it faultlessly. I read a letter from her at the school committee, at the faculty meeting yesterday, and just botched it up completely. So let's see if I can do better. The development of a Galvin Middle School mission statement must begin with a discussion about the characteristics and needs of the middle school student, typically the 10 to 14-year-old student. Early adolescence is a time signified by dramatic physical, emotional, and social change. Although we all know that change is difficult, we also recognize it as exciting and most definitely challenging. The typical 5th grader enters our middle school looking very much like an elementary school student. They are dependent learners. They are used to having one teacher for all of their major subjects, and they are generally not willing to take responsibilities for their actions. Everything is everyone else's fault. Still, they are very attached to their parents, and gaining their parents' approval is very important. By the time these same students leave the Galvin 4 years later, they must look very much like our high school students. They must be independent learners, be able to adjust to a number of different teachers on any given day, take responsibility for their actions, and be ready to face the academic rigors of high school. Preparing students for the future in an environment that supports their growth is our job. Because our students are in such transition during these years, a cornerstone of a good middle school must be consistency. We have a responsibility to be a stable force in their changing lives. This is not only a period of great change for students, but parents realize a number of changes in their relationships with their middle school child. For the first time in their lives, it is no longer a child's parents' approval that is most important. It is the approval of their peers. They will send parents double messages. They will tell their parents to stay away, but what they really mean is don't go too far. In light of the characteristics of early adolescence, we cannot look at students as empty vessels into which we can pour knowledge. We must look at middle school students as the unique individuals that they are and approach their education in a holistic way. Middle school is often thought of as a time when students can be disciplined problems. It is my belief that a number of behavioral issues arrive at this time because it is no longer cool to say, I can't do the work. So instead, the student says, I won't do the work. This can be the time when we begin to lose students. As you discuss our mission tonight, I urge you to expand your view of intelligence to include a wider range of students. I am a believer in the theory of multiple intelligences. I am convinced that if every student knew that he or she was gifted in at least one area, we could build an educational model based on positive reinforcement and a healthy sense of self-esteem, rather than trying to push reluctant students who do not believe they have self-worth. Upon these basic premises, I believe that together we can make a very good middle school and take a very good middle school and make it an excellent middle school. We need to make a number of physical changes to the building. We need additional resources. We need an extracurricular activities program, and we need to continue to upgrade the curriculum. However, based on the importance of these years, it would be money well spent. We already have the one thing that money can't buy, a faculty who genuinely cares about kids and is willing to do whatever it takes every day to make the lives of our students just a little bit better. If I might say, that is true Paula Molinese. It's just typical of the way she thinks of things. And so we'll go to our first people who will talk about the faculty input that we gathered yesterday.
In our meeting yesterday, we went for about 10 minutes, and then we were asked to prioritize, and we made a list. We may have been 10 groups, and we made a list, and of course, many of the priorities were the same. And we really think it would be best tonight if you saved your questions until everyone has presented, and we'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have on any specific item. The first was the adequate staffing, and after that, academic excellence. We would like to have a team spirit and continue with a team approach. Mutual respect in a non-threatening atmosphere was very, very important, and consistent rules. Also, cooperative teachers and time for the faculty to cooperate. The inclusion of hands-on skills such as shop, and include that in the 5th and 6th grades.
Also finding ways for all students to succeed. Communication, very important between home and school as well as within the teams. Changing students from, again, dependent to independent learners. Interdisciplinary activities. Opportunities for the intellectual, the social, and the emotional growth. A physical plan that accommodates needs of teachers and students. Clean and private bathrooms, and interestingly enough, Mr. Holmes, as I was looking at your list, the physical plant was very important to teachers and students, and I actually didn't see the physical plant on that survey. So again, clean and private bathrooms are very important. The student ownership of their school, so the kids thought student council, the teachers, again, thought student councils. Small class size to address issues of students in the class. After-school activities, a varied curriculum, healthy environment, air quality, etc. The humane, flexible scheduling, teacher decision-making, and character development in teaching, etc. So these, again, are the things that the teachers came up with yesterday.
Thanks a lot. Now we're going to hear from the students' responses. Maybe if you stand up this way facing, would that be comfortable for you? Yeah, you might as well. Yeah, I think this is okay. Yeah. All right. Now, by the way, this was a mind-boggling job. Each one of these teachers took these home during the holidays, and they had approximately 260 each, Dr. Bennett, to go through. And so it was quite a show, but it was really interesting as well. And we're going to start with the 5th grade. Ms. Dorman.
I found it interesting, this is a little side note, I teach 6th grade, so it was interesting for me to read some of the work of 5th grade students and kind of the assumption that these will be my students next year, so it was interesting in that respect. Basically, the method to my madness was to basically tally mark as I went through the surveys, check off in a format. It took me several sheets to do this as I'd come up with other ideas. And I then had to sort of group things together. For example, the students often mention good teachers, excellent teachers, kind teachers, and I felt that just using the word teachers would suffice all of their different headings for that. So I went ahead and prioritized, and then I actually percentiled each different category that the students came up with. So reading down from the highest percentage, 53% of students thought teachers, 15% principal, meaning nice, participates, walks in halls, etc. 15% hands-on learning. Students mentioned things like games, experiments, activities, projects. Many students felt that was very important. 14% students, nice, kind, caring, things like that. 12% good discipline, and I carried that over to no fighting, because a lot of students felt that was important. 12% homework, and there were some varying ideas about what homework should be, how much homework they should have, but homework was a priority for many of them, and they wanted that to be addressed.
10% more lunchtime, 9% cleanliness, 8% lockers, better, bigger, easier to open, 8% computers. It's kind of split between lab time for everyone and having actual computers in every classroom in the school. 7% books. They mentioned things like more books in the library, more textbooks, as well as resources in the classroom like encyclopedias, dictionaries, things like that. 6% supplies, 5% furniture, and they mentioned new, more comfortable, things like that. 5% good food, and 5% drug-free. We also mentioned a couple other headings that came up a few times were after-school activities, shades and curtains, field trips, nurse, parents, PTO, school committee, and superintendent. I tallied up the 6th grade survey, and I did mine very differently. I started looking through them and got sort of a common ground and made 6 different headings and then put them underneath the headings. And the way I did them, I sort of grouped them together like Jen did, putting some of them together, but I put the ones, I prioritized within each category, and that's what I have in mind. So for faculty, the biggest one was they wanted good, nice, respectful, helpful, educated teachers, fun and educational teaching, good principals, friendly, helpful staff, better substitutes, and I put some quotes on here on each page, and some of their quotes were, when teachers are kind and respect you for who you are, which most of teachers do, we should respect the teachers, they in turn respect us. Being able to go to a teacher and talk to him or her about problems that you have without feeling embarrassed. I did building maintenance, cleaner bathrooms, bathrooms that actually work, cleaner rooms, cleaner schools, air conditioning and heat that works, water fountains on the 2nd floor, and a clean environment. And they said that the bathrooms are smelly, all written over and broken. There's only one stall that works upstairs. Fix the water fountain in the 6th and 7th corridor. I did supplies and furniture. They want more computers, time on the computer, CD-ROMs for the students to use for reports, good cafeteria food, cheaper food, bigger desks so that the kids fit in them all year. This is the big growth age for them. Bigger lockers so all their things fit, new supplies and books, curtains and windows. They want the windows that aren't cloudy, because some of the rooms, the windows are clouded over. And they said that they should have bigger and better rooms so you can have the heat fixed. You could have better lunch in the cafeteria. Proper desks that fit one size. Lockers should be wider to fit all of our stuff. My next heading was rules. They want less homework, less restriction on clothes, an organized school, no skateboard or rollerblade confiscation, freedom of speech, discipline, and if a child is in sports, they should be given the week's homework ahead of time. They said that a good school needs to have good organization. It needs to be run smoothly. Students also need to be organized. More work in school and less homework. Another topic that I did was scheduling. They want gym more often, recess for 6th graders. This is their first year without it. Hands-on activities, longer lunch periods, a longer team time, music more often, field trips, offer a foreign language, time to do homework. They want the right to assign our own classes and choose extracurricular activities. And a lot of activities and more for classes we don't have, like gym. And my last one was social concerns. They said that students who respect one another, feeling safe, having no weapons and no violence, students who listen to the teachers more, students being able to voice opinions more, and students who cooperate with each other. And the quotes that I put on this were a place where you can feel comfortable and wanted. It's where everyone will like you for who you are and not what you look like or how you dress. Where there are happy faces all around and there is no teasing or hatred. There shouldn't be any drugs, and don't make fun of someone who is different.
And I did the 7th grade, and I took a statistical approach also. And I tried to type in all the responses and then group them. But after doing all my work, I realized that's an impossible thing to do because kids would just phrase the same thing in 2 different ways. And so I went back and tried to put their responses into categories. And as Paula mentioned in the letter, you really have to know who these kids are for these responses to be clearly understood. Many of the things that have been said, these kids also said, but they only made it into my summary now if at least 10 of them mentioned it. So just because 2 or 3 didn't mention, only 2 or 3 mentioned something doesn't mean I think it's not significant. It just basically they want time to talk, they want freedom of choice, and they want free time. I'm sort of just explaining how I see a 7th grader, and you'll see it come through. And their physical development, they're growing very quickly. They like food, they want snacks, they want recess, and they want to sleep also. They're quite good. They want to start school later. But the number one response clearly was about teachers. And because that was so significant, I'm going to say that to the end of my little summary and just read you some of their exact wording on their responses about teachers. But the number 2 response was about lunch and food. I don't have my numbers right here because I couldn't put them, as I said, but over 70 kids wanted longer lunch periods, and many wanted better food and cheaper food. The homework issue was the number 3 issue. Some wanted none, some wanted little, some wanted some, but a lot of them mentioned they wanted it coordinated by teams so that they didn't get 3 subjects one night or 5 subjects one night and no subjects another night. The next most mentioned topic was field trips. Many of them talked about having lots of them and more of them, and I guess there are parents who may not agree with all of that, but clearly they enjoy doing that. It makes them want to come to school, I think. And the kids would also like some choice about their field trips. In assemblies, there were quite a few students who talked about, you must have had some really great assemblies here. They mentioned a couple, specifically the NASA assembly, and wanted more things like that. The next most mentioned topic was the facility. The bathrooms was very significant. They want better, working, cleaner bathrooms with mirrors. They want a clean building. They want lockers that are bigger with more space in between. They want heat when it's cold and air conditioning when it's too hot in the late spring. They want water fountains that work. That was news to me. I haven't heard that before, but there were a lot of kids that mentioned it. They want a better cafeteria. And I think by that was really the food issue, I think. But that's what they described it as, a better cafeteria. In scheduling, they want more time between classes, more free time to talk, shorter periods, and to start school later. In terms of grouping the topics, technology had a lot of responses. They want computers in each class, and I think 2 or 3 of them mentioned they want a laptop for each student. As far as the classes go, sort of the curriculum issues, I came up many times. Apparently they feel constrained. There's a constraint this year because so many of them talked about, please let us have more art. In gym, there were a variety of issues. They want more gym. We wanted no gym, but they want better equipment. And they talked a lot about their choices in their classes. I think they're at an age where they want to choose and not be told necessarily. And I know they have health, computer shop, art, and home ec, but they did want some of them some choice. I think they want to take. I don't know how much. I guess they don't get a choice. But it's different this year. My daughter was in 7th grade last year. So some of the teacher comments, if you don't mind my reading them, they wanted teachers who believe in their students, and many of them would put a note afterwards, like so-and-so or Mo-Star or something like that. That they teach you things, but in fun ways, make subjects fun, coordinate in pods to schedule tests. Teachers who help students to learn, who take the time to listen, who are patient with the kids, who are experienced, fair, reasonable, wanting to learn just as much as the kids do, who care about you, teachers who are interesting to listen to, organized, flexible. I'm not going to read them all. Teachers who love children, who want to share their knowledge, who help every person learn, who explain something you don't understand. This is, makes a school good for them. Teachers with the will to teach. If there are cool teachers, then people wouldn't mind learning something. Who teach at different levels, so really smart students can be more challenged. Teachers who are good, nice, funny, understanding, and then kids are the same way. A teacher you can go to if something is wrong. And that too was an issue. Guidance, sort of a guidance issue came up in sort of different ways in different responses. But kids have some great input, and just because it's not here, I hope somehow somebody can read through them all because they have some great ideas.
And I have 8th grade, and I was surprised that teachers was the top issue in 8th grade too, because I didn't think 8th grade knew that there were teachers in the building, to be perfectly frank. But the adjectives they use, these are the kinds of teachers they want. Nice ones, kind ones, smart ones, patient ones, strong ones, friendly ones, fair ones, non-mean ones, unscary ones, and this is a quote, teachers who don't yell and pout when something goes wrong. And calm teachers mean a lot to a school, because who would want to come to school to a screaming teacher? So I thought that was probably a pretty good way of looking at it. And I put my list together as a wish list from what the kids had put down. And I was really surprised at how positive this list was. I didn't
First of all, their first wish, clean bathrooms with mirrors, doors on all the stalls, and toilet paper. More dances. More access to computers and to the library. Bigger desks, bigger lockers, and more space between the lockers. Good lighting. A swimming pool. A game room. Soda machines. A drinking fountain on the second floor. Obviously, this is one that there's no drinking fountain up there. A skating park in the parking lot. More field trips, and one boy thought 15 per term. It sounded pretty good to him. And I thought it sounded pretty good too. Murals on all the walls painted by 8th graders, and enough time to have lunch at McDonald's. And then I just pulled some quotes that really struck me. Is as funny or serious or really thoughtful. A good school has a challenging curriculum. You get a good school by not teaching anything that would be useless in later life, like certain algebraic equations. I felt that way myself. A good school is one where the students have a say in the things that go on. Maybe we need a student council. A good school doesn't let the students give up. It strives for all students to do well and to get involved. And I'll just end by saying there were 2 students in the 8th grade who felt that hugging and kissing in the halls should be acceptable.
Between teachers or kids? And now, on that note, we're going to parents' questions. Thank you very much.
Do you want me to go up there?
Yeah, I think that would be easier.
Oh, I have to go up there all by myself?
Where was
Just
it?
stay.
Okay. We posed the same question to the parents as to the students and the faculty, which was what makes the middle school a good school. We did it through the Galvin Gazette, and we didn't get as many responses. Would have been nice. It was the holiday. It went out the week before the holiday. I know several parents came to me and said they found it in the backpack Monday, today, yesterday, that kind of thing. We did survey the parents pretty extensively at the end of last year, and we are using that information in terms of the council did this survey, and the council is using that information this year to hopefully let the administration and everybody else know what their feelings and concerns were and utilize that information. I'm just going to read you some of the comments. I didn't put it into any statistical category because we didn't have that many. Pride in collective achievements and excellence, a sense of belonging and ownership, accountability to one another and to the larger community, communication and trust, a rigorous academic program and a variety of extracurricular opportunities, supports different learning styles, strong effective communication channels, integrated curriculum, consistency, learn respect for each other, super learning and study skills, how to say no, keep in touch with changing trends, consistent teachers with clever ideas to make learning fun, awareness of developmental needs of this age group, acknowledgement of varied learning styles and needs, ability to challenge each student and develop each student, commitment to academic and emotional excellence. The diversity of age and maturity in a middle school should be recognized, and its structure should be designed accordingly. The needs of 5th grade children are very different from those in 8th grade, and their educational experiences should be different. Give children an opportunity, the middle school gives children an opportunity to meet and make friends with many new children. The teachers, the students, and the resources are the most important thing. Should have computers, industrial arts programs. Not every child will make it to college. Safe, welcoming environment to students and teachers, individualized learning, challenging all levels, teamwork, after-school activities, availability of library and computers after school, and maybe even on weekends, variety of electives, teachers and substitute teachers who are the best, field trips that are relevant, a longer school day to reduce stress and make kids happier and better learners. Some of my comments, because I've been doing this through the council and through the and the parents in how to transcend this developmental period. Another area would be the technology. I think a middle school is a really great opportunity to really delve deeply into technology so that a computer becomes familiar to the students as books and pencils, so that when they get to high school, it's a real learning tool for them. It's no different to them than as a research tool than a book or anything else. Up-to-date quality resources, that means a building that truly meets the needs of the students and the faculty, and furnishing teachers, textbooks, materials. And another area which we're trying to really work on in the school council is making the middle school a vibrant community, so that it's not just a place where the kids go for 6 hours a day, but it's a community to them with a student government and after-school clubs, activities, sports, so that you make the transition from the elementary to the high school. The kids in the high school go to the high school and they stay after school. It's part of their life. It is their life. And I think we should make that transition here in the middle school as well, begin it, so they don't just go to the high school and all of a sudden it's there. And then finally, that a good middle school is always changing, evaluating, reevaluating, and adopting new ideas. It's always in flux.
Thanks, Donna. Phil and Frank have the unbelievable job of trying to putting all this together. And most of this is new stuff that they've heard. So if you wouldn't mind trying to come up with some summary.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, this is, I guess, begins the conversation. So this is kind of works in progress now as we evolve forward here. What we did do is, when we got together this afternoon to kind of hear this stuff through for the first time, we started where we heard from the kids, the voice of the children in all of this, and basically just kind of came up with the high-level frameworks that have been identified and kind of started this as the conversation. I think what we can add is, based on what we just heard, there are some things to embellish this from the other voices, from the voice of the parents and the voice of the faculty. So I'll start off with good students. So the question is, what makes a good middle school? And what we heard was basically good students, and that was kind of good students socially. And I think this is really probably the crux of what it means to be a middle school. As Paula talked about, and it came up very often here, this is a big transition period for kids as they grow up. So whether or not it's the brain stopping at this point and needing a little bit of help along, or it's just the idea of moving into a middle school and being overwhelmed with all the new kids and all that, it certainly is a big transition period. So what we heard about is we heard about values, we heard about rules, and I think what I had just heard on top of that is this whole idea of helping these kids to become independent learners, multiple intelligences, and recognizing that each one of these students has some special intelligence and has some special gifts to offer, and they should acknowledge that and be recognized for that. Also that the idea of having this kind of an environment with a student council, I think also, I guess the assumption I have when I hear a lot of what kids are interested in, it really is kind of the social piece of it all. They're really socially conscious, and to be able to provide a good environment so that social aspect can develop in a healthy way is important. So,
We'll talk about it.
like
One of
that.
the things that the students were interested in, I think the parents were interested in, I'm sure the staff is interested in, is both of these elements in the top, which talk about good facilities, supplies, furniture, and whatnot. The fact of the matter is that education takes place better, and I hope the staff agrees with me, takes place better in a pleasant environment. If you put kids in an environment that is less than conducive to learning, they simply won't learn as well. So there were some concerns around the cleanliness of the school, things like the shades. We've heard the shades for years. I 6 years in the school committee. I'm not talking about shades, the curtains. Was always the issue, okay? Privacy in the bathrooms. I think we've done some things to accommodate that, and we're planning to do more. And the council will be coming forward with some suggestions relative to that. Mirrors in the bathroom is kind of interesting to me, but I can understand why they would want mirrors in the bathroom. As far as furniture and supplies, these kids are growing. As somebody mentioned, they're growing. And I guess a kid in the 7th grade could probably outgrow his desk during the course of the year, I suspect. had the experience, but I don't remember whether I ever yes. So they have to worry about, we do need more computers. Now, we've made some progress in this school relative to computers this past year. We need to continue to do that because, like it or not, the fact of the matter is every one of these kids, once they're out of school, is going to be faced with a world that is computerized. And the more we can teach them and the more opportunity we can give them in terms of computers, the better off they're going to be to face the world that they have to face. And that's really the mission. If you look at the bigger picture over there, the real mission is to take a kid, come into kindergarten, put them out ready to face the world out of high school. Now, the world for them may be college, it may be service, it may be a job, but they've got to be ready to face the world. And they're not going to face, I don't care what they do, they're going to face a world with computers. So they've got to have that. And more access to the library was mentioned, and more books. It's encouraging to know that the kids want more books. I would have thought that they would want to throw them all away. But apparently they want more. So those are areas that are very important to them, and I suspect are very important to all of us as adults in the community.
And then the other two areas that kind of go hand in hand are the good teachers. A good middle school is made up of good teachers, and we heard about caring teachers, patient teachers, smart educated teachers. And then also a link with that into good curriculum, and we heard about hands-on learning and the scheduling issues to tie in with the curriculum. And what I also heard from now the voice of the parents and also the voice of the faculty is from the standpoint of the teachers to work on cooperative teaching methods and also staffing issues. These are things that need to be, a good school has good staffing. From a curriculum standpoint, I think that was opened up into curriculum which addresses different learning styles, extracurricular activities, we heard more than once, issues around class size, that it should be a holistic approach to curriculum, and that the curriculum should provide for fun learning. So that's kind of what I heard in the last couple of presentations. So I think the combination of this with this tries to make the whole thing a little more robust. I think one other point that I did hear is that there was also acknowledgement that parents are also part of this, that the nurse was part of this, and that the school committee was part of this. And I think what Bill had talked about, this icon that we kind of came up from a visionary standpoint, was really the conversation that we had early on about really what is this mission work all about. And we're focused on the middle school because that's the mission that we want to create. But that's in the context of what we kind of came up with as the whole school system. And so we have the three schools, the elementary school, the middle school, and the high school all linked. And it also had the conversation about the community. So we even talked about how businesses have helped out in the past and kind of the role businesses could play in some of the challenges we have. I mean, Bill and I were talking about today, if we need curtains in some of the classrooms, why couldn't some of the high school kids in their home economics class make curtains for the middle school? I mean, it might be better than making pillows or something like that. So the idea of opening up this view to include the whole community, and even kind of at a global level between the World Wide Web, foreign exchange students and all that, there's a lot of learning that goes on in a lot of different ways. So I think, we're focused on the middle school, but we kind of saw it as in the context of the whole school system that sits in a greater global community, and kind of with the phrasing of everyone learning together.
Thank you very much. And just to sum it up a little bit, Diane came up with a...
This really doesn't sum it up at all.
No, but it's kind of a nice...
But we all like it. 3 times already, and this doesn't sum up anything. We're
I like
convinced to.
He likes it though. I was watching television one morning during Thanksgiving break, and there was a philosopher who was on the Today Show talking about a book he had just published, and it was called "If Aristotle Ran General Motors." And I don't pay much attention to philosophers usually or General Motors, but I sat and listened to it, and I was absolutely astounded when he finished that it sounded like he was talking about a school, and he really sounded like he was talking about our school because of Aristotle's 4 theories. And his 4 theories are that you should have 4 things. You need in a business, he was just talking business, you need in a business goodness, unity, beauty, and truth. And I was really struck by it because, first of all, the beauty one is this building. It is nice to come to a building if it is clean and comfortable and safe and it's pleasant to come to. That's how the beauty one works out. The goodness and unity, heaven only knows we've been working on goodness for years, and we've certainly been asked to now we're able to pass that on to the kids. And as far as the truth part, I really searched my mind to think about the truth, and I think I can say I've probably been in this school system longer than anybody in this room. And I really think the truth is out there right now with Dr. Mullen. I think with Dr. Mullen having her illness and having Dr. Bridges come and talk to us, and Mr. Holmes come and talk to us, and Dr. Levine, and Mrs. DiTullio, I think we're all working under the truth right now, and we have passed that truth on to the kids, too. They're very much aware of what's going on, and I think it's made us a better school. So, Mr. Chetwin got that book himself for Christmas, and I gave that book to Dr. Mullen for Christmas, and one of these days I'll get to read it. But I really was struck by it, because I do think that is exactly what we need to be working toward. It's Aristotle's old theories of how you live your life, I think. And that is my deep statement.
And I think that fits in beautiful.
Thank you.
Nice job.
You can hear it any other time. I'll tell it again tomorrow if you'd like. Charge of mission.
Do we want to entertain questions of these people for
Yeah.
a couple minutes? And then we'll do a little breakout, or do you just want to get into those questions in your breakouts? How would you like to proceed? Okay, let's go to the breakouts then. I'm going to assign the school committee members, 21 should be number 1, side 2, side 3, will be number 4. I need volunteers for spaces. Your room, you're number 1. You're number 2. Someone else, number 3, and number 4. So would the room people sort of identify yourself as some sort of a number? Okay. Now I'm just going to assign the rest of you in random. Herb, number 1, Mary 2, Diane 3, Diane 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Wendy, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me start with one that sort of jumped out at me, and it really was not intended when Donna made the comment, because I checked with her afterwards. When we were dealing once before with middle school concept, the whole issue of competition got a tremendous amount of discussion around winners and losers, and even into grading, into awards, into, every time there's a winner, there's 18 losers. And that middle school kids are very sensitive about who got the award, but then who lost, who didn't. And middle school should be a time where, and I thought I heard Donna say it, but she didn't, where we should be really emphasizing group kinds of competitions. Not that competition is bad, but that we should be very careful about individual type competitions. Because again, we don't want, at the expense of one kid being a super winner, we have others who feel they're losers. So that was something that jumped out at me. Other comments anyone would like to make? That sort of, yes.
Well, in the working in the same group, we talked an awful lot about multiple intelligences, and even thought of starting training as soon as possible, thinking that staff would be very receptive to that concept of multiple intelligences.
And that really just supports the interaction between teacher and child. Nothing else really has to change in the school structurally. That just helps in that exchange. And that's such an important exchange of how the teacher relates to a child and how the teacher is able to better analyze what the child's strengths are so they can build on those strengths. Other comments, yes?
I think that if you listen carefully to what the kids said on their surveys, grades 5 through 8, in their own words, they talked about the opportunity for every child to succeed, not giving up on kids,
and I surprised myself with these questions because usually these discussions are more on the philosophical end of things. My questions are very pragmatic and concrete, but it would be helpful to kind of get a sense of what you all think. And they relate to these 5 areas, and I really think that you all did a great job with surveying, getting some input from the individual groups, and then really pulling it together like that. So, first of all, to start off with a very pragmatic question. One of the things that troubles me about this school is the size of it, the size of the school itself and the individual class sizes. And that is coupled with the facility piece, because you all are just crammed in here, and there's no room to expand. We're hampered with the class size piece because there's no way to go with lowering class sizes because there's no classroom space available. And this, in my mind, raises the question of the 5th grade. And when we open the Dolbeer School, we'll have some flexibility. Flexibility to perhaps start a kindergarten center in Hurd and Ewell, maybe, and have all-day kindergarten, or we have some flexibility down the road to maybe looking at bringing the 5th grade back to the elementary school level. And my concern, I'm torn with this because as a parent, having just gone through 5th grade, I see the tremendous advantage that the 5th grade has here. On all of the levels that people talked about tonight, academically, socially, the opportunities that are available to them in terms of music and other enrichment kinds of programs, the teaming approach that I think works so beautifully. But the fact of the matter is, in thinking about the bigger issue of the facility size here, and short of putting on a 3rd story, weighing out the 2, what do you think? What do you think about the 5th grade? And then how does that relate to you to looking at a space option? Or does the value of having the 5th graders here far outweigh any possible advantage that may be gained? That's kind of my first pragmatic question.
I have a question for you, in the sense when you say that, you've been talking about moving the 5th grade to Dolbeer.
We would be able to, if we took the kindergartners out, and I don't know, we'd have to kind of look at that.
The original survey showed quite clearly that when we opened the new Woodville School, we would have the option to bring the 5th grades back into the elementary schools with the opening of the 2 new schools, if we in fact did a decentralized kindergarten in the community.
My only concern was that we would not create another move for the children.
Well, again, they just wouldn't move up.
Right. That would be fine, but like take them, put them all in Dolbeer from the whole
No.
town.
But the staff survey here several years ago, I don't want to speak for the staff, they're quite capable, but the individual survey here several years ago, the staff here was really quite opposed to the 5th grade coming back. They were quite aligned and committed to their staying here. On the other hand, the parent survey at the time happened to be quite interested in pursuing keeping 5th graders in the elementary.
There's some point about that. To the best of my knowledge, and my knowledge of England, most middle schools are 6 to 8.
No,
That's not true.
the curriculum-based, they are.
Oh, really?
They want to say-
Maybe you found that, probably some times they are.
Basically, a middle school can be 6 through 8. It can also be 6 through 9. You'll see middle schools that have that configuration. But they are also 5 through 8. So it's
Unfortunately, they
actually
are
one.
what they are typically because of
I don't
existing
deny
buildings,
that
not
there are
because
probably
of
some that are 5
educational
to 8 in
philosophy.
Spain. Am I wrong in assuming that most middle schools are 6 to 8?
I think you're,
Probably because of space constraints.
And also because the original middle school model was 6 to 8.
I
Not
don't know
ours.
the word most, you know,
But in the
maybe
70s when the
50% are
model-
6 through 8, but boy, a lot of 5 through 8, and some are 7 through 9.
Yeah.
I mean, the 7-9 model is one
That's
that's
interesting, because I've never talked to anybody from another town who's got a 5 to 8. I'm not saying whether it's good or bad, I just want to talk to anybody.
Well, in buying the new math books, being on that committee last year, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't it 5 through 8? Weren't they done K through 4 as a section, and then 5 through 8, and then 9 through 12? If you were looking at those books, that's what the impression I got.
The framework,
Framework.
frameworks are laid out, K through 4, 5 through
So educational
from a staff-
reform changed the model in essence.
From a staff point of view, we are too large. And I would be opposed to the fifth grade moving back.
But the middle school concept is specifically, one of its major components is the decentralization into team concept of schools within schools, to bring the largeness small.
Right.
That's one of the original frameworks of the middle school concept.
And I think that's something that, as we evolve, that we've been working towards. So numbers don't lie, and space there isn't any. But it has evolved into an incredible group of people across the way at this point in time. And so I see it as losing some fifth graders. I see it as losing a really wonderful group of colleagues. And there is a nice flow from 5 to 6, 6 to 7, 7 to 8 in questions. If you need materials, or there are questions, or there are just ideas. That has worked out great.
And I think I've come to see that too, which is why I'm sort of so torn by this question. Because the other piece here that I think of in terms of size, and I'd like to talk about this a little bit too, is this whole heterogeneous versus homogeneous. And we've had this discussion many times. And I think that basically I agree with the philosophy of heterogeneous if you can do it right. And I don't think you can do it right unless you have the numbers to do it right. And given the space constraints here and the numbers, I don't think we have the numbers to do it right, or as best we can. So that's another piece of the numbers that I see kind of playing into this.
It sounds like the real issue, all of this discussion leads right down to where we've been for a long time, and that's the facilities. I mean, we know that from a organizational standpoint, you're right, you could build schools within schools as long as you have a physical plan to do it. We don't have the physical plan. And there's some question as to whether we have any place to build the physical plan.
And you see with the elementary plan as it is, we're not even going to look at the middle school for another 25 years, 20 maybe.
Donna, you've been trying.
Oh, I was just going to say that in terms of when you do any kind of reading or anything, they always put a developmental group of kids from the ages of 10 to 14, which are the ages of the school buildings. So that, I mean, as a parent, I've been the same way as you, back and forth on whether the fifth grade should be here or not here. And on the whole, I lean for keeping the fifth grade here. It's just a great concept that this particular school has been able to facilitate, having the fifth grade here. With our smaller neighborhood schools, a lot of those kids need to move out and expand by the time they get to fifth grade.
Jen?
Well, two things. I think fifth grades belong in elementary school, but that's just my opinion. But you just said that the middle school won't be finished for 25 years. I thought the last I heard, the middle school was the next thing in line after the Woodbury.
Well, it's on the capital $530,000 list to start doing some little things, but I think she means a major renovation.
I actually thought it was major after Woodville, no?
We're doing the elementaries are in that plan of capital construction under the School Building Assistance Act. And the last ones, it's 20 to 25 years before that plan is completed. And after that, we would move to the middle or the high school.
Yeah, that could change. We did talk about the issue of the high school and the middle school being considered for major modifications before we went to Greenwood and the west side.
That's what I thought I had.
And that was discussed that way. Again, I think the next facilities committee, once the Woodville is done, will have to face that issue. What's next?
But we did discuss doing the middle school before we did Greenwood or Walton.
Because
I remember that discussion.
we were going to upgrade the Greenwood. We were going to upgrade the Greenwood knowing we were going to be in there for 15 years. So that's why we spent so much money on the Greenwood in the last 2 years. But
And all I've ever heard is people talk about Walton and Doyle and how they're not going to be touched for 100 years. So I always
think, Chris, I think if we go back and look at the plan, I think the middle school is sooner on the plan, but still, that's 6 to 8 years out. I've just done a projection on when the Woodville will be done based on state funding. And, we're into 2002 to 2004. That's 6 years.
Really, she's saying it's 2010, realistically.
Mr. Smith?
One of the questions it raises for me is, what's the driver to the middle school concept? And if it's facilities and demographics and which facilities get freed up and how should we switch kids around based on the kind of facilities we have, that's a whole different conversation. Then if there's a real commitment to a middle school concept, and I think in terms of a middle school concept, it's not going to happen in a year. There's going to be, bumps you have to go through and staffing.
If we were building a
and
new
that sort of stuff.
community in the cornfields of Iowa for 25,000 people, we'd design it quite differently than we would having this conversation, because we really have to design within the realities of it.
Why don't we just, Chris's question is a wonderful question. It's the one that's been asked and asked. Why can't we just make a decision at some point and say, okay, we want it to be 5 through 8, and then let's get creative and figure out how do we make that happen.
We presented the 6 through 8 solution, and the town rejected it. Quite emphatically. I mean, the $37,000 program that we presented was a 6 through 8 proposal.
But I don't think the 6 through 8 proposal was what was
Interpret it how you will. I guess I
You don't get it any other way.
Yeah, but that's not what people were voting down. They weren't voting down.
Chris, if I might, the year before I came here, I co-chaired a year-long study of grade configuration or reconfiguration for the town that I was working in. And that was a K through 12 discussion, but a lot of focus was on the middle school, exactly this kind of discussion. It was more about whether or not the 8th grade was going to move to the high school, and space consideration was the driving factor there. What you'll find in the research is that there is no research. There's a lot of research that all the research tells you is it really is up to the individual community. That there is no solid research that tells you whether or not a 5 through 8 school is a better school than a 6 through 8 school. As a matter of fact, most of the research tells you that whatever school you have, the teachers will make it work. It will work. Because it's not a K through 9 school with so much disparity that the differences are really workable. So it really is up to each individual community. There is one alternative that we haven't talked about that would free up space in a school like this, and that is year-round schooling. And kids going to school on a rotating basis.
These are for the kids that want less school, less homework. You'll survive
Not every kid going to school all year, but going to school in quads or thirds, and having 6 weeks off in between frees up a lot of space in the building. You can do a lot of creative things.
I was just wondering if I could be
I had the courage to take year-round school to a town meeting once, but I've got to hand it back to me quite
We're used to having things handed back to you.
Notice it wasn't this town.
You don't change people's lifestyles, and that really does.
Right, yes, it does. As Stoneham, when they were trying to do away with their February and April vacations, and didn't have much. But my unconventional is, as far as this middle school goes, the 5 through 8 or whatever, I mean, I think we have made a decision, or the town has made a decision. I think we are 5 through 8. But Stephen, I actually want to put you on the spot, because I think that it was your class, it was the first class to come up here as 5th graders. And you are going to be graduating from high school. Am I correct? Was Michaela one of the first classes to come up here in 5th? 7 years ago?
It was a class that just graduated.
How do you feel, having gone from Montrose, that wonderful neighborhood school with wonderful teachers, coming up here to a middle school? You did 4 years here and then off to high school. 5th grade, was it too soon?
It was fine.
It was fine? You adjusted?
Yeah.
And I know I put you on the spot without any,
He's not turning the camera on himself.
But Mary,
So I
the
didn't know.
teachers made it good.
Yeah.
The adjustment in this town, I've heard wonderful things about how this town made that work. The staff made it work.
Yeah, and I agree. And I came up here that year as a fourth grade teacher because we still had an elementary school here. But it was wonderful to see the workings, to see the beginnings. And again, I wasn't part of it as a fifth grade staff member, but I was part of it. I too was new at the time at the school. And
You know what,
it was wonderful.
Marie's trying.
but if you've made the decision to keep fifth grade here, which you clearly have made, the town has
I
made,
think that.
you now want to make, no, I'm not committed to it because I have some of the same issues. If you then want heterogeneous grouping at small class size, and you have 77 seventh graders saying they want a longer lunch in an absolutely wild lunchroom that was not designed for 1,100 children, you have to do something about the facility.
Right.
In other words, you can't have everything. We can't have the fifth grade here, heterogeneous grouping, 1,100 students, and as
Absolutely.
successful education as you could otherwise.
Because then
So
you're
if you
compromising
have two
some of
things,
those
you have to
foundations.
change something
And that's
else.
the
So
commitment to the
you can't have the
class.
staff sitting back and say, oh, we have what we want. We have fifth grade here. We're going to do heterogeneous grouping now. We all have to work together to change something that will make that all work better.
I don't think we have what we want.
Well, those two items, if we get I'm just saying, if you go to heterogeneous grouping, that's a very significant change from what we're doing. And if you want to do it, we have to do it right, I think.
Here we go.
I was going to say, I'm not aware one way or the other whether the commitment has been made. And answer you, Chris, I think one of the things that we might need to do is to identify what are the things that we want to have happen to the students. I mean, we're talking about becoming independent learners and all that, but what are the things that we want to have happen to these children? And then to do an analysis in terms of, can it happen the way we want it under present circumstances? If so, how can we do it? If not, what are some of the options? And not just is it, do we want to keep them or not? I absolutely would believe they belong here. But we're taking a look at it, if we want to achieve this, and this, is it possible and feasible to keep a group here? Or do we need to move a group up?
Or do
Well,
we
you
need,
see, that would lead to, that's what would lead to the decision being made.
Based on what we want to accomplish for the children at the middle school level. Can we accomplish the things we want for all of the children at this level?
And
If
you
not,
see,
then what?
that-
The decision had already been made, we wouldn't still be asking the question. That's why I don't believe the decision should be made, because we wouldn't still be asking the question. I feel the question all the time.
I think that's the heart of this whole exercise. The heart of this whole exercise is, what are we about at the middle school, and what does that mean? What does that mean for the children? What does that mean for the staff? And what does that mean for the community? And if we decide, if the mission is that the middle school is 5 through 8, then what that says to me is that I, as a member of the school committee, need to start advocating to give you the resources you need to make that happen. And I think that's what the heart of this whole discussion is. Is it of significant educational benefit for those fifth graders to have them here, as well as for the sixth, seventh, and eighth graders who potentially benefit by having those fifth graders? And if that's educationally sound, and if that's the route we want to go, then we as a community need to be able to put the resources to making that happen.
If I could just pick up on that, but particularly what Marie and Mary Ann just said, there's a reverse to that, and that is that if middle school is going to include in its mission statement that all children can succeed, can and will succeed, and by having 1,100 students in 4 grades, we can't make that happen for every kid, then something has to change. Either the resources have to be added, or the fifth grade has to go. Because if you open up the school by having only 3 grades here, so that you can get to every kid, and that every child will have the same opportunity regardless of natural academic inclination, that you may have to give up the fifth grade in order to make that happen. Because we as educators do not have the luxury of saying that 90% of the kids will succeed and the other 10% will. We don't have that luxury. So if we really believe that every child needs the opportunity or will have the opportunity to succeed, and that cannot happen in an 1,100 student school with no place to go, and we can't have the proper resources to make it happen, then something has to change. Or the mission has to change.
That's what this exercise is really, we're digging right down now to the basic, not the way it is, but the way which the idea. We have the opportunity to know the community about what it should be. And it can't be whatever concessions we want to make.
I have no vested interest or even any strong leaning one way or the other, whether it's 5 to 8 or 6 to 8. But I think it is true, we need to see what it is we want to do for the kids. And it's absolutely true that once that decision is made, once it's been made, you're absolutely right. The school committee, not just the school committee, but the community will advocate
what they
for
want.
the resources necessary to make that happen. And Herb's right too, because if you can't, if there's no place to build on this, so you can't do it, then you got another issue that
You're perpetrating a hoax on the community that you can give off. Other comments?
By the way, at the other end, there could be a discussion, and I know that this will upset people almost as much as the year-round school. The other end is they were with the high school for the 8th grade. That's another discussion, because that's a great reconfiguration that we looked at in my past life, and that was a possibility. It was a very real possibility.
It's a possibility.
To cluster and pod the 8th grade in one place in the high school, and then and run an 8 through 12 high school, and there's no research that will tell you that that's bad. There are high schools right around here that are 8 through 12. Knoxville comes to mind. That will work. So there are other alternatives. Instead of moving the 5th grade back, move the 8th grade up.
Any other
if I may
non-traditional ideas? Yes.
Dr. Dean's comment, as a person who's been both in the high school and here, I would hate to see the 8th grade start in high school. I just feel different than consistent high school. Problems I'm doing it here, but exactly so. Yeah, that's why. I think everybody, without my spelling it out, I think everybody knows that we do have problems. If we don't take those problems, we're going to put 9, 10, 11, 12 kids.
This is totally crazy, I don't know anybody that does it, but, for example, the lunchroom problem would be alleviated if the starting time wasn't exactly the same everywhere in the school. For example, 5th graders don't mind getting up at 7, the 8th grader doesn't want to get up at 7. I mean, are there some of those kind of
And
scheduling?
we might be able to eliminate the 6th class. I mean, quite frankly, we're looking to those options in budget. You know, like starting school time, different.
By the way, Marie, that's a concept called differentiated staffing. There are some schools that have gone to differentiated staffing where a third of the building comes in early, a third of the building comes in at 10 o'clock, and a third of the building comes in at 11:30. And you run, and people try to have a choice. I know a high school that went to that. Of course, the football kids all wanted the early time, and then et cetera, et cetera. So you do run into some problems with it, but it has worked in other places where staff who like to get up early and leave early have that early shift, and staff that like to sleep and come in late have the late shift.
But it also gets to learning styles, teaching styles, and living styles, and it's not so out of the question. Okay, this is robust. You mean another off the wall.
This is Sunday day.
There you go.
Well, I think
That's
that
what-
we agree that we're going to an all-year-round school system with differentiated staffing, and we're going to start that next year.
Are we open on Saturdays yet?
Started after April vacation.
All right, with an 8 through 12 high school.
Okay, other comments from your groups that you want to share with us? You've been most gracious this day.
We talked a lot in our group about after-school activities, and we brought up a lot of things about that, and how, as a teacher, I feel that's a very negative connotation to say after school. It's, a lot of students look at it as something bad, they don't want their peers to know they're here, and that creates problems in many areas. Not only with kids not coming in for extra help when they need it, but also parent involvement in the school. Parents are less likely to come in and talk with you if they know that there are very few children in the building at that time as well. So I think that offering things like that could open up a lot of doors in many different areas beyond, the obvious of offering more things to kids and giving them some more motivational factors for being here and doing things and meeting new teachers they may not have and participating in things that they can succeed in and develop more intelligences. I think it really covers many different areas for one use of things.
And deals with the very risky activity that goes on beyond the school from 2:30 to 5 o'clock in the day in this community.
Can we pilot that this spring? I loved the phrase someone used earlier, that vibrant community here. Could we look at,
The school council, the school council's goal, one of the school council's goals this year is to have an after-school program, initiate an after-school program, and we're hoping to be able to maybe pilot
about it, and I wish she was here tonight because the passion that she has when she talks about it it just sweeps you away. I may be one of the few people that actually attended the middle school, and that's one of my greatest memories of being in middle school was the fact that it was such a positive place to be after school as well as during school. You know, I was there for chorus and drama and all of these things, and you really met teachers in a very different atmosphere. You felt comfortable talking with them, and your parents felt comfortable being there, and it just changes the whole atmosphere. And often came to me.
Feel very well adjusted.
Was yours 5 through 8 or 6 through 8?
It was 6 through 8, and I don't think I would have objected to 5 through 8. I don't think it would have been a big hassle or anything. I think it would have been fine.
Peabody's the largest middle school in the entire area of this state, and they're 6 through 8,
What's their size?
1,400.
Could you tell me, just between us, how are we doing with this heterogeneous grouping? Is it in all grades? Is it in some grades? Is it working? Is it in all subjects?
I think that's the varied part.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. We've actually tried working towards heterogeneous grouping.
5 through 8?
I can speak for 5 and 6. My knowledge of 7 and 8 is that your social studies department has been heterogeneously grouped for a very long time.
But it's not. Because
Because of.
the other classes are grouped. So automatically, we are grouped. De facto. Even though we're heterogeneous.
I see. Right. So 5 and 8, they've 5 and 6 have tried, and you probably need to help me out with the 5th grade a little bit here, Martha.
Go ahead.
I will. The only thing that we're really having a problem with in the 5th grade, and we brought it to the math department, is grouping in math. And that's when we would prefer to have homogeneous grouping in math. Especially with the new book, we can go at different speeds. We feel like some of them are being held back a little, some of the students, where they should be allowed to move on. So it's something we're still discussing.
And 6th grade would go along with that as well, I think. That basically math is an area that we feel grouping is probably imperative. And we've tried non-grouping. And different teams right now in the 6th grade are doing different things as far as their grouping. We have tried, again, the heterogeneous grouping across the board in my team. And we have found that it's very difficult in math. That's the most difficult area.
May I suggest, Mary, purely for academic reasons, that there is, as opposed to grade reconfiguration, there is a veil of research on heterogeneous grouping, and I'll just mention 2 names, Jeannie Oakes and Bob Slavin. One's a professor at UCLA, the other one at Johns Hopkins University. They've been writing for 20 years on heterogeneous grouping and actually have documented research on the positiveness of heterogeneous grouping across the curriculum. I would suggest that a study team in the middle school researching some of these things that have been written might be helpful in looking at some of the statistical research that has been done in tracking kids in control groups and experimental groups in the heterogeneous venue versus the homogeneous venue. When it's, again, resources, smaller class sizes, they talk about the ideal class size 18 to 24, no higher, no lower, in order for it to be effective. By the way, cooperative learning talks about the same thing. But I would suggest strongly that you take a look at Jeannie Oakes and Bob Slavin's work. They're still writing. They're very contemporary. Still writing from the 1970s on kids that they've tracked and people that they've tracked about heterogeneous grouping.
And I think that this is one of our
be in classes of 25, 26, and 27. So when you were talking about the smaller classes with the heterogeneous, it's really exciting that there's an opening there, that possibility exists.
If we could figure out how to do it, with the space piece, because I think
We've never had less than 24 people.
The challenge now, next challenge, is to get a team of people to draft. I like the pictorial representation here, I certainly like it there, but to draft it brings all these ideas into, a paragraph or two. And so we turn that back to you, David, and your teams to draft that kind of statement that we will then bring forward for review at the school committee, and then we'll distribute back out to the community and let them interact, and then try and finalize it by the end of February. So that's kind of the goal. But we're in good shape. This really has been a wonderful discussion. It's obviously a lot of homework's been done here. I thank all of you that did a lot of part of that homework. The answers are not easy. The questions are easy, but the answers are very difficult. And quite frankly, I'm personally committed to middle schools. I see tremendous advantages. But to maximize those advantages, we will need resources. We will need in-service. We will need to continue on our course toward the ideal middle school. And we're really only 2 or 3 years down the course. We're not out there yet. But it's exciting to keep pointing toward it. With that, any final comments, Chris?
Just tell me about, is it a faculty senate or a faculty council?
Faculty forum?
Faculty forum. What is that and what's its purpose and who belongs to it? Is it an elected body?
Is it elected?
Yes.
Yes, okay, it is elected, and,
There are 2 representatives from each grade level, and then people from the specialists there.
let me give you an example of the retention policy. We came up with a retention policy working through the faculty forum, and then we present it to a regular faculty meeting, then it's sent on to Mr. Holmes. And so the faculty forum has input into everything that happens in the school. All administrative decisions go through that.
I see. And do you as a faculty, as a middle school faculty, have specific goals for this year? I know when we met with the middle school faculty last year, there were some goals around bringing the junior high entity and the athletic entity together, and some things about that. And I wondered if you had any specific goals that you
I
wanted
don't
to
think we have any
accomplish this
specific one. I think the general one that Paula wants us to pursue is this whole idea of developing as the concept of multiple intelligence. Unless, Bob, you know, that seems to be
Our first 2 years here was bring the faculty together.
Operationally.
Right.
Now, education,
Basically,
to how kids learn.
right.
How kids use
Multiple
it.
intelligence is that factor that's going to unite 5 days.
But I think initially also one of our goals was to set some policies, standard policies for the group. And we have the days in which we started with that, and now so now we're in the process of implementing them with consistency.
There's some good things come out of that. The tardy policy that was developed with informing to the teachers has been very effective in comparison to last year. I've had 3 days with 0 lates in the 8th grade. Yes, 3 days. 0 lates.
What is the study policy?
It used to be
20?
It used to be 20 grades.
What is the study policy?
I have kids on the roof.
Yeah, they're going to McDonald's for breakfast.
It's very true. The good policy is the fact that both Dave and I monitor the computer. We have computer base, which I go into and get a cumulative list. And I don't want to give numbers out publicly. Hit a certain number and a form letter goes home. Okay? And I call the student down and I say, is there a problem? Is there some reason why you're not getting to school on time? And in a couple of cases, we've had some real problems I had to address with the parents. Okay? And it was not beyond the child's capability of himself. And we say, okay, the next time you are late, okay, you have detention. Automatic. You go right to detention. And that's been very effective. Very effective. We now have 3 students above 10 in the restart at the middle of the year, let the clock restart, except for those real serious offenders over so many already. If we do have a chronic late person who really isn't responding very well to detention, we'll keep that person on detention. But we are discussing the format of restarting the clock at the beginning of the second semester. Because well, it's more of a reward for a wonderful response to the system, with the exception of maybe 10 youngsters. Now, remember those 1,100 youngsters in the school, we're talking about 10 or 12 youngsters that we have a tight problem. We also have reduction in attendance problems. We're now also monitoring the attendance problem. When someone starts going over 5 or 6, hi, Mrs. Smith, how are you this month? Gee, we noticed that so-and-so has been absent 6 times. Is there a problem we can help you with? We'd like to know why, because we're really concerned. This approach, coupled with going to Gigi McGrail, Bob Dodd is a big pusher on this. Mr. Dodd is really the one that brought it to my table. Paul and I initiated this last year, sort of halfway through the year. So a lot of nice things have been happening here. They've been very positive. If you figure about 1,126 kids in this school, and I think Dave and I deal with less than 20 on a continuous basis. That's a wonderful thing to say. You keep it in perspective. Okay? There's 1,100 youngsters in this school that are really cooperating. A lot of the hard work that's being done, too, is on the framework. And that's being done through the curriculum liaisons, and that is a continuing daily, monthly project. And of course, Rose is coordinating that, too. That really takes a lot of people's energy. And I think we're doing quite well on that. Yeah. I'm okay with that. I think once you get you out here at 9, it's already 20 minutes of 10. And you've been most gracious. Thanks again for all your efforts.
Thank you. Maybe you could just stay and have some dates that I'd just like to go over with you, but
We start that diversity scheduling tomorrow, so like any teachers who are here can come in later. Charlie in that group.
Mary, differentiate.
Differential.